Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of AI, but with a specific focus on the potential dangers and how it might impact Black Americans. We are incredibly grateful to William, the founder of BAM, that's Business Automation Management, for sponsoring this conversation. It's just so crucial that we acknowledge as AI becomes more sophisticated, there's a real risk of job displacement. But William and BAM are stepping up. They're offering essential training and education and business support to help you thrive during this AI revolution. So if you're feeling uncertain about what this new landscape means for you, remember, BAM is here to help. You can find them at www.bam4u.biz. Thanks again, William, for empowering listeners with solutions. Now for our deep dive today, we're going to be unpacking some truly thought-provoking insights from Mustafa Suleyman. He's an AI expert and co-founder of DeepMind. His perspective on where AI is headed, both the good and the potentially very bad, is something I think we all need to pay attention to. He really lays out these big questions. Can AI be contained? What happens if it outpaces human control?
And how will this technology reshape the world, especially the future of work? I have to admit, diving into this material is both exciting and a bit daunting, but that's why we're here. We're going to break it down together and figure out what it all means, especially for Black communities.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head with those questions. And Suleyman's background makes his perspective even more compelling. He started his work with AI by teaching it to play those classic Atari games, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, that kind of thing. And what's fascinating is that the AI wasn't programmed with specific strategies. It learned just by observing the pixels on the screen, figuring out the rules and developing tactics.
Yeah.
That even surprised the game experts.
So wait, the AI essentially taught itself how to play and even win.
Yeah.
Just by watching. That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, and that early work really hints at the learning potential of AI, which has now led to these large language models like ChatGPT. These models are powered by an almost unimaginable amount of computational power. We're talking billions upon billions of calculations happening every second.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around that kind of computational power. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it? But this is the reality of where AI is today. And this power enables these AI systems to do things that were once considered purely human territory. We're talking about creating realistic images, writing convincing text, even composing music. It's getting harder and harder to tell the difference between what's human-made and what's AI-generated.
That blurring of the lines between human and machine, that's where things start to feel a bit unsettling, right?
Absolutely, and it's why Suleyman raises this idea of containment. Can we actually control and guide this technology so it benefits humanity, especially communities that have historically been marginalized? Because like you said, the potential for job displacement is huge. If AI can write code, create art, even provide legal advice, what happens to the people who currently do those jobs? And how do we make sure Black Americans aren't left behind in this shift?
That's a critical point. It's not just about the technology itself,
Yeah.
but about who has access to the opportunities it creates and who bears the brunt of its potential downsides.
Exactly. And historically, we haven't always been great at ensuring equitable access to new technologies and their benefits. So how do we prevent AI from exacerbating existing inequalities?
Suleyman uses this analogy of a hammer, right? It's a tool that can be used to build a house or to cause harm, but how do you apply that to something as complex and potentially pervasive as AI?
That's where it gets tricky. Suleyman acknowledges that simply banning AI isn't realistic or even desirable. After all, there's incredible potential for good in healthcare and renewable energy and countless other fields. But he also warns about what he calls a race condition. Essentially, if one nation or company slows down AI development for ethical reasons, another will likely surge ahead. And that fear of falling behind creates this dangerous dynamic where everyone rushes forward without fully considering the consequences.
So it's almost like this runaway train.
Yeah.
Where everyone's so focused on winning the race that they don't see what might be happening to the tracks ahead. But if we can't just ban AI, and this race is already happening, what are our options?
Well, that's where Suleyman gets really specific. He outlines 10 areas of focus for AI containment, and some of them are quite thought-provoking. For example, he suggests developing AI systems that can actually help us control other AI systems.
Okay, so like fighting fire with fire. I was actually messing around with a language model the other day, and I asked it point blank, how do we prevent an AI takeover? And it suggested in all seriousness that another AI could be programmed to act in humanity's best interests, essentially acting as a safeguard.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It almost sounds like science fiction. But it speaks to the complexity of this challenge. And it's not the only solution Suleyman proposes. He also talks about things like audits, to monitor the development of open-source AI models and controlling the physical resources, the choke points, that are essential for AI development.
So like limiting access to the powerful computer chips
Yeah.
needed to train these massive AI models. That seems pretty crucial.
It is. But he also emphasizes the need for taxation. He proposes using taxes levied on AI companies to fund things like reskilling programs for people whose jobs are displaced by AI. Of course, this raises the question of international cooperation. If one country imposes these taxes, won't companies simply relocate to avoid them?
That's a valid point. It sounds like any effective approach to AI containment would require a level of global cooperation we haven't really seen before.
You're absolutely right, and that's why Suleiman calls for a new kind of international body, a global technology stability function, to coordinate these efforts and promote stability in the face of AI's rapid development. He stresses that this isn't just a theoretical threat. The potential consequences of failing to contain AI could be catastrophic, especially for communities that are already grappling with systemic disadvantages.
So what you're saying is, this isn't just some futuristic sci-fi scenario.
Yeah.
This is something that could have very real and very immediate impacts on people's lives,
Oh, yeah?
especially within Black communities.
Exactly, and that's why we need to be having these conversations now.
Well, I, for one, am glad we are. And before we go any further, let me just remind our listeners that William and BAM are dedicated to helping Black Americans navigate this changing landscape. They offer the resources and support you need to thrive in the age of AI. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this, check out www.bam4u.biz. Now back to our deep dive. Suleiman doesn't shy away from the big, almost existential questions here. He compares AI to a new species and suggests that if we don't find a way to contain it, humans could potentially be displaced as the dominant species on the planet. I mean, a new species, that's a pretty bold statement.
It is, but he backs it up with some pretty sobering examples. One that really hit me was his discussion of AI's potential to create dangerous synthetic pathogens, like a highly transmissible virus.
That hits close to home after what we all went through with the COVID-19 pandemic.
It does, and it makes you wonder, what if the next pandemic isn't a natural occurrence, but something deliberately engineered?
Right, now that is scary.
And it's not just a theoretical possibility. Suleiman argues that within a few years, someone with enough technical knowledge could potentially create a harmful AI program from their own home. The accessibility of these technologies is increasing rapidly, and that's a whole other layer of concern.
So we're not just talking about some dystopian future where robots take over. We're talking about very real, very immediate threats that we need to be addressing now.
Exactly, and that's why understanding the dangers of AI, and particularly how those dangers might disproportionately impact Black communities, is so crucial. We need to be aware, we need to be prepared, and we need to be actively involved in shaping the future of this technology. And it's not just about these, dramatic, large-scale threats either. Suleiman also paints a picture of what our daily lives might look like if we don't get this right. He talks about a world where our interactions are increasingly with AI, not with other people.
So instead of grabbing coffee with a friend, we're having a virtual chat with an AI chatbot. Is that what he's getting at?
It's more nuanced than that, but you're touching on an important point. Think about how much time we already spend on screens on our phones, interacting with algorithms that curate our news feeds and recommend products. That trend is only going to intensify, and those interactions will become increasingly sophisticated as AI develops.
So it's less about AI replacing human interaction altogether, and more about it subtly changing the nature of our relationships and how we experience the world, almost like the metaverse. But instead of being this separate virtual reality, it's interwoven into our everyday lives.
Exactly, and this raises a whole other set of challenges. For example, if AI can create hyper-realistic images, videos, and audio, how do we know what's real and what's not? How do we maintain trust in a world where anything could be faked?
We've already seen this with deepfakes, right?
Okay.
Videos manipulated to make people say or do things they never actually did. That's already causing real harm, and it's only going to get more difficult to discern truth from fiction as AI technology advances.
Absolutely. And this erosion of trust has implications that go far beyond just being fooled by a fake video. It could undermine faith in institutions, sow discord in communities, and make it even harder to address critical issues like social justice and economic inequality.
So we can't just blindly accept everything we see or hear online anymore. We need to develop those critical thinking skills and be more skeptical of the information. It's constantly bombarding us. But how do we do that when AI is becoming so good at mimicking human creativity and even human emotion?
That's where Suleiman suggests, somewhat paradoxically, that AI itself might be part of the solution. He talks about the need to develop AI systems that can help us defend against other AIs. For instance, using AI to detect fraudulent credit card transactions,
Right.
or identify deepfakes.
Okay, so fighting fire with fire. I actually asked a language model a similar question about how to prevent an AI takeover, and it proposed a solution where another AI could be programmed to act in humanity's best interests, essentially acting as a safeguard. It's like having an AI guardian angel, I guess.
Yeah. It's a fascinating concept, and it speaks to the potential of AI to not just be a problem, but also a tool for solving problems. Think about spam filters and antivirus software. We're already using AI to protect ourselves from malicious code and unwanted content. As AI evolves, those defensive measures will need to become even more sophisticated.
Right, it's like a constant arms race.
Mhm.
But instead of countries stockpiling weapons,
Yeah.
it's developers building increasingly intelligent AI systems to defend against other AI systems. But that still leaves me with a question. Can we really rely on technology alone to solve this problem? What about the human factor?
That's a crucial point. And Suleiman acknowledges that technology alone isn't enough. He emphasizes the importance of human involvement, particularly when it comes to setting boundaries, establishing ethical guidelines, and making decisions about how AI is developed and used.
So it's not just about writing better code, it's about having those tough conversations.
Yeah.
But what we want our future to look like. It's about regulation policy making and making sure that ethical considerations are at the forefront of AI development.
Precisely. He argues that government regulation is crucial, but not enough on its own. He proposes a more comprehensive approach, a global technology stability function that would involve international cooperation and a long-term vision for AI governance.
I get the need for that global approach. But I keep coming back to those unstoppable incentives we talked about earlier. Everyone's rushing forward, trying to get ahead in this AI gold rush. Who's going to slow down and think about the long-term consequences, especially when profits are on the line?
It's a real dilemma, and Suleiman acknowledges this tension between short-term gains and long-term risks. He draws a parallel to the climate crisis, where the incentives to prioritize economic growth often outweigh the urgency of addressing environmental concerns.
It's like we're caught in this cycle of short-termism, where we focus on immediate profits, even if it means jeopardizing the future.
Exactly. Breaking out of that cycle requires a shift in mindset, a willingness to prioritize long-term sustainability and the well-being of humanity over immediate financial gains. And that's a tough sell in a world driven by competition and the pursuit of profit maximization.
Okay, so circling back to Suleiman's 10 areas of focus for containment, we've touched on safety, using AI to control other AI, and the need for audits to monitor what's happening in the open source world. What else is on that list? What are some of the concrete steps he proposes?
Well, he goes into detail about controlling those choke points we discussed earlier, specifically the supply chain for essential resources, like those high-powered computer chips needed for AI development. He argues that governments can and should restrict access to these chips, especially for organizations that might be using AI for harmful purposes.
But again, that raises the issue of international cooperation. If one country restricts access, won't companies simply relocate their operations to another country? That's more permissive. We see that all the time with corporations seeking to avoid taxes or environmental regulations.
You're absolutely right. That's why Suleiman emphasizes that these strategies can only be effective if there's a coordinated global effort. Without a shared understanding of the risks and a willingness to work together, it's going to be very difficult to effectively contain AI.
It all comes back to global cooperation. And honestly, that seems like the biggest challenge of all.
It might be. But remember, the stakes are high. Suleiman suggests that the potential consequences of failing to contain AI could be catastrophic, even on the scale of unimaginable catastrophe and suffering. Those were his exact words. He even compares the potential threat of AI to nuclear weapons, saying it could be even more dangerous.
Wow, those are some heavy words. And honestly, a bit hard to grasp. I mean, I can picture a mushroom cloud, but the dangers of AI seem so much more abstract, more insidious somehow.
You're right, it's not as tangible as a bomb, but that almost makes it more challenging, because the threat isn't just a single catastrophic event. It's the slow creeping integration of AI into every facet of our lives, potentially eroding our autonomy, our privacy, even our sense of what it means to be human. And if we're not careful, those changes could happen so gradually that we don't even realize the danger until it's too late.
So what can we do?
Yeah.
I mean, hearing all this, it's easy to feel powerless. Like, what difference can one person make when we're talking about something as big and complex as AI?
That's where Suleiman's message becomes really empowering.
Hmm.
He believes that knowledge is power, and that by understanding AI and participating in the conversation, we can actually help shape its trajectory.
So it's not just about leaving it to the experts, the tech giants, the policymakers. It's about all of us being informed and engaged citizens, demanding transparency, pushing for ethical guidelines, and holding those in power accountable.
Exactly. He urges us to stay informed about AI developments, to engage in discussions about AI ethics, and to support organizations that are working on responsible AI development.
And this is where I want to bring BAM back into the conversation, because William and his team are not only empowering individuals with the skills they need to thrive in the age of AI, they're also advocating for policies that promote responsible AI development. They're on the front lines of this, making sure that Black communities have a seat at the table and a voice in shaping the future of this technology.
They're a shining example of what proactive, community-focused action looks like. They're proving that we can both embrace the potential of AI and mitigate its risks, particularly for those who are most vulnerable to its potential downsides.
So while the future of AI might feel uncertain, even a little scary at times, it's not something we should shy away from. We can choose to be informed, to be engaged, and to be part of shaping a future where AI benefits all of humanity.
And that starts with conversations like this, with asking tough questions, with supporting organizations like BAM, and with recognizing that we all have a role to play in making that vision a reality.
Absolutely. Huge thanks again to William and BAM for sponsoring this incredibly important conversation and for giving our listeners concrete solutions. Don't forget, you can find out more about BAM and all the incredible work they're doing by visiting their website at www.bam4u.biz.
And to our listeners, we leave you with this final thought. As AI becomes increasingly integrated into our lives, how do we ensure that its development and deployment prioritize the well-being of all people, especially those within Black communities who might be disproportionately affected by its economic and social impacts? This isn't just a technological question, it's a moral one. It's a question of justice, of equity, of who benefits and who bears the burden of this powerful new technology.
We encourage you to continue exploring this topic, to share your thoughts and questions, and to be part of shaping the future of AI. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.